History is a graveyard of unanswered questions, where even the most famous figures left behind deaths shrouded in mystery. Imagine a world where Cleopatra didn't die by the bite of an asp, where Napoleon wasn't defeated by stomach cancer, and where Edgar Allan Poe's final days weren't lost to incoherent ramblings. What if everything we've been told about these deaths is wrong? The truth is, history's greatest endings are still hotly debated, with secrets buried so deep that even modern science struggles to uncover them. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 30 of the most baffling historical deaths cases where the official story doesn't add up, where whispers of conspiracy linger, and where the dead might still be trying to tell us something. From poisoned emperors to vanished explorers, from staged suicides to murders disguised as accidents, these aren't just stories, they're puzzles waiting to be solved. And by the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about how these legends met their end. So buckle up, because history is about to get a lot darker. Now, let's turn our attention to one of history's most legendary conquerors and the enigma surrounding his untimely end. Alexander the Great, the man who built an empire stretching from Greece to India, met his demise at just 32 years old, a death as mysterious as it was sudden. Was it poison slipped into his wine by a rival, a brutal bout of malaria contracted during his campaigns, or the toll of years spent drowning his sorrows in alcohol? The theories are as varied as they are compelling. Some historians point to the bitter power struggles among his generals, eager to carve up his empire before his body was even cold. Others argue his health had been crumbling long before that final fever took hold. And then there's the chilling possibility that his own inner circle, sensing his erratic behavior and paranoia, decided his time was up. One thing's for sure, Alexander's death wasn't just the end of a man. It was the spark that ignited a bloody scramble for power, leaving his empire fractured and his legacy tangled in whispers of betrayal. So, was it fate or foul play? The answer might lie somewhere in the shadows of history, waiting to be uncovered. Moving from the battlefield to the halls of power, we arrive at one of history's most infamous betrayals, the assassination of Julius Caesar. The phrase "et tu, Brute" has echoed through centuries, but the truth behind his murder runs far deeper than a single moment of treachery. Caesar's rise to dictator for life had made him enemies, and on the Ides of March in the year 44 before the Common Era, dozens of senators plunged their daggers into him, claiming they acted to save the Roman Republic. But was it really about preserving democracy, or were there darker forces at play? Some historians suggest wealthy elites, threatened by Caesar's reforms for the poor, secretly backed the plot. Others point to eerie warnings he dismissed, a soothsayer's prophecy, his wife's nightmares, even strange omens like sacrificed animals without hearts. Yet Caesar walked straight into the Senate that day, unarmed and unworried. Was it arrogance, or did he truly believe his allies would never turn on him? The aftermath was chaos, with Rome spiraling into civil war and the conspirators meeting brutal ends. So, was this a noble act of patriotism or a cold-blooded power grab? The daggers may have fallen over 2,000 years ago, but the mystery of who really orchestrated Caesar's death still cuts deep. Now, let's journey from the blood-stained floors of the Roman Senate to the golden sands of Egypt, where another legendary ruler met a fate shrouded in intrigue: Cleopatra. Her death, like her life, was steeped in drama and mystery. The official story claims she chose suicide by the bite of an asp, a venomous snake, rather than face humiliation at the hands of Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. But was it really suicide or a carefully staged murder? Some historians argue Octavian had her quietly eliminated to remove a political rival and cement his own power. After all, Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt, a queen who had outmaneuvered Rome's greatest men, from Julius Caesar to Mark Antony. Her death marked the end of an era, and Octavian had every reason to ensure she didn't survive as a symbol of resistance. Then there's the question of the asp itself. Ancient accounts describe her death as peaceful, even noble, with the snake's bite leaving no visible marks. Yet, others point out that an asp's venom causes agonizing convulsions, hardly the serene exit history paints. Could Octavian's propagandists have rewritten her final moments to suit their narrative? Adding to the mystery is Cleopatra's lost tomb. Despite centuries of searching, her burial site and the remains of Mark Antony, said to lie beside her, have never been found. Some believe Octavian destroyed it to erase her legacy, while others think it's hidden beneath modern Alexandria, waiting to reveal its secrets. Cleopatra's death wasn't just the end of a ruler, it was the end of Egypt's independence swallowed by Rome. Whether by her own hand or another's, her fate remains one of history's most debated enigmas, and until her tomb is found, the truth may stay buried with her. Now, shifting our gaze from the sands of Egypt to the shadows of its most famous tomb, we uncover the enigmatic death of King Tutankhamun. The boy king, who ascended the throne at just 9 years old, met his end at around 18 or 19, leaving behind a legacy wrapped in mystery. Modern technology has peeled back some layers of this ancient puzzle, but questions still linger. CT scans of his mummy reveal a fractured leg, leading some to speculate he died in a chariot accident. Others point to the presence of malaria parasites in his remains, suggesting illness played a role, but the intrigue deepens when we consider his family history. Genetic testing shows Tutankhamun suffered from multiple genetic disorders, likely due to generations of royal inbreeding. A club foot, a cleft palate, and a weakened immune system could have made even a minor injury or infection fatal. Yet whispers of foul play persist. Some researchers argue the damage to his skull indicates a blow to the head, possibly murder. Could a rival have silenced the young pharaoh to seize power? Then there's the infamous curse of Tutankhamun's tomb. When Howard Carter discovered it in 1922, the sudden deaths of several expedition members fueled rumors of a supernatural revenge. While science dismisses the curse as coincidence or toxic mold in the tomb, the legend endures, adding another layer of mystery to Tutankhamun's story. Whether by accident, illness, or murder, his untimely death remains one of history's most tantalizing unsolved cases. And as long as his golden mask stares back at us from the past, the questions will keep coming. Turning now to one of England's most haunting royal mysteries, we delve into the chilling fate of the princes in the Tower. Edward V, just 12 years old, and his younger brother Richard of Shrewsbury were the sons of King Edward IV. After their father's death in 1483, they were placed under the protection of their uncle, Richard III, in the Tower of London, supposedly for their safety ahead of Edward's coronation. But within months, the boys vanished without a trace, sparking whispers of betrayal that would stain Richard's reign forever, the most damning theory. That Richard ordered their murders to secure his claim to the throne. Tudor historians, like Sir Thomas More, later painted him as a villain, claiming the princes were smothered in their sleep and buried secretly within the tower. Yet, without bodies or eyewitnesses, the truth remained shrouded. That changed in 1674, when workers renovating the tower unearthed a wooden chest beneath a staircase inside, the skeletons of 2 children, roughly the princes' ages. Were these the lost boys? The discovery reignited centuries of debate. Modern science has only deepened the mystery. DNA testing on the bones remains inconclusive, as the skeleton's identity couldn't be confirmed without comparing them to the prince's known relatives. Meanwhile, some historians argue the boys might have escaped or been quietly exiled, pointing to obscure accounts of impostors claiming to be the princes decades later. Others suggest rival nobles like Henry Stafford or even Henry VII could have orchestrated their deaths to frame Richard. The Princes in the Tower case is more than a historical whodunit. It's a puzzle of power, propaganda, and the fragility of truth in the hands of the victorious. Whether Richard III was a calculating killer or a scapegoat for Tudor propaganda, one thing is certain: the shadows of those two young princes still loom large over England's bloody path to the throne. And as long as their fate remains unproven, the debate will rage on. Now, let's set sail into another enigma, the baffling final chapter of Christopher Columbus. The man who famously crossed the Atlantic in 1492 spent his last years in obscurity, plagued by illness and bitterness. But how did he really die? The answer is as tangled as the routes he charted. Officially, Columbus succumbed to heart failure in 1506, but whispers of darker causes persist. Some point to syphilis, a disease rampant among sailors, which could explain his documented joint pain and deteriorating health. Others suspect revenge poisoning, a theory fueled by his strained relations with the Spanish crown and rivals who resented his brutal governance in the colonies. Then there's the bizarre saga of his remains. Buried first in Spain, his bones were later moved to the Caribbean, then back to Seville, or were they? In 1877, a box inscribed with his name was found in Santo Domingo, sparking a transatlantic tug of war. DNA tests in 2006 added to the confusion, suggesting the Spanish bones might be his brothers. Columbus's death, much like his life, remains a contested voyage between history's pages and the grave's shadows. Whether felled by disease, betrayal, or simply time, his legacy and his bones refuse to rest quietly. Turning now to a mystery wrapped in music and myth, we arrive at the strange and untimely death of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The composer, whose genius shaped classical music, met his end at just 35 years old, leaving behind unfinished works and a cloud of unanswered questions. The most enduring legend is the tale of the Requiem, a mysterious stranger commissioning Mozart to write a funeral mass, which some believe was a premonition of his own death. Others speculate it was a scheme by rival Antonio Salieri, who, though later exonerated, was long rumored to have poisoned Mozart out of envy. But modern science offers less dramatic yet equally compelling explanations. Some researchers point to strep throat, citing accounts of his fever and swelling. Others argue for trichinosis, a parasitic infection from undercooked pork, which aligns with Mozart's own letters mentioning his love of pork chops days before falling ill. What truly killed Mozart? Was it illness, a rival's jealousy, or simply the weight of his own brilliance? His death, like his music, remains a haunting melody, unfinished yet unforgettable. Now, let's shift our gaze from the world of music to the battlefields of history, where another enigmatic death lingers, that of Napoleon Bonaparte. The French emperor, exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, died in 1821 at the age of 51, but the cause of his death has been hotly debated for centuries. One of the most gripping theories involves arsenic poisoning, not from a traitor's hand, but from his very surroundings. Tests on Napoleon's hair revealed high levels of arsenic, leading some to speculate that the green dye in his wallpaper slowly leached the toxin into the air, poisoning him over time. Others argue it was simply a common preservative in food and medicine of the era, not a deliberate act. Yet medical experts counter with a more mundane explanation: stomach cancer. Napoleon's family history of the disease, coupled with his reported severe abdominal pain and weight loss, aligns with this diagnosis. But here's where it gets eerie. When his body was exhumed in 1840, it was remarkably well preserved. This unusual state fueled whispers that arsenic, used as a preservative, had been administered intentionally to mask foul play. Was Napoleon a victim of his environment, a tragic family legacy, or something far more sinister? The mystery of his death remains as contested as his legacy, a man who shaped empires yet couldn't escape the shadows of his own end. Moving from the battlefields of Napoleon to the shadowy streets of Baltimore, we find ourselves unraveling the haunting mystery of Edgar Allan Poe's final days. The master of macabre, known for his chilling tales, met an end just as perplexing as his own stories. In October 1849, Poe was discovered delirious outside a tavern, wearing clothes that weren't his own and unable to explain what had happened to him. His last words, whispered before he died days later, were so incoherent they only deepened the enigma. One of the most debated theories suggests Poe succumbed to rabies. Witnesses described symptoms like confusion and agitation, which align with the disease. Yet, no evidence of an animal bite was ever found. Another angle points to alcohol. Poe had struggled with drinking, but friends insisted he'd been sober for years. Then there's the bizarre theory of cooping, a form of electoral fraud where victims were kidnapped, drugged, and forced to vote repeatedly. Could Poe have been a casualty of this brutal practice? The missing clothing adds another layer. Why was he dressed in someone else's garments? Some speculate he was robbed or assaulted, while others believe it hints at a larger conspiracy. Even the location of his death, a hospital ward, not his home, fuels suspicions. Poe's demise remains as shrouded in mystery as the plots of his own tales, leaving us to wonder if the truth will ever emerge from the darkness he so famously explored. Now, shifting our gaze from the eerie demise of Edgar Allan Poe to another enigmatic figure lost to history, we arrive at the baffling disappearance of Ambrose Bierce. A sharp-witted journalist and satirist known for his dark humor and unflinching critiques, Bierce vanished without a trace in Mexico during its turbulent revolution in 1913. His fate remains one of history's most tantalizing unsolved puzzles. Bierce, then in his 70s, had traveled to Mexico, allegedly to witness Pancho Villa's rebellion firsthand. In his last known letter, he wrote with eerie foreshadowing, "If you hear of me being stood up against a Mexican stone wall and shot to rags, know that I think it's a pretty good way to depart." After that, silence. Some believe he was executed by Villa's forces, his sharp tongue perhaps sealing his fate. Others argue he staged his own disappearance, a final act of control by a man who'd long flirted with themes of death. Then there's the guerrilla theory. Mexico was a war zone, and Bierce could have been caught in crossfire or targeted as a foreign agitator. Yet no body, no grave, no definitive proof has ever surfaced. Even decades later, alleged sightings and deathbed confessions only muddy the waters further. Did Bierce, the master of cynical twists, engineer his own mysterious exit? Or did Mexico's chaos swallow him whole? Like his own haunting short stories, the truth may lie forever just out of reach. Turning now from the vanishing of Ambrose Bierce to a death so bizarre it defies belief, we come to the almost supernatural endurance of Rasputin. This Siberian mystic, whose influence over Russia's royal family made him powerful enemies, didn't just die, he endured a killing so extreme it feels ripped from folklore. The plot began in December 1916, when a group of nobles, desperate to break Rasputin's hold on Tsar Nicholas II, lured him to a palace under the guise of a party. First, they poisoned his wine and cakes with enough cyanide to kill several men. Yet Rasputin, unfazed, kept eating. Frustrated, one conspirator shot him point-blank in the chest. He collapsed only to revive minutes later, attacking his assailant before fleeing into the courtyard. There, he was shot 3 more times, beaten savagely, bound, and tossed into the icy Neva River. When his body was found days later, the autopsy revealed the impossible water in his lungs. He'd still been alive when thrown in. How? Some speculate the cyanide was neutralized by sugar in the desserts, or that Rasputin's notorious alcoholism hardened his body. Others whisper darker theories, that his rumored hypnosis skills slowed his heart, or even that he possessed literal otherworldly resilience. One thing's certain, Rasputin's death, like his life, was a spectacle of defiance. Whether through biology, luck, or something more sinister, his final hours became the stuff of legend, a macabre testament to a man who refused to die quietly. Moving from the almost mythical endurance of Rasputin to a crime that shocked the world, we arrive at the haunting mystery of the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. What seemed like an open and shut case has left unanswered questions for decades, casting doubt on whether justice was truly served. On the night of March 1, 1932, 20-month-old Charles Lindbergh Jr., son of the famous aviator, was snatched from his crib in New Jersey. A ransom note demanding $50,000 was left behind, sparking a massive manhunt. After weeks of tense negotiations and partial payments, the case took a grim turn when the toddler's body was discovered just miles from the family home. The crime outraged the nation, and pressure to solve it was immense. 2 years later, Bruno Hauptmann, a German immigrant, was arrested after ransom money was traced to him. The trial was a media circus, with Hauptmann insisting he was innocent, a mere patsy framed by the real kidnappers. Despite his claims, he was convicted and executed in 1936. But even then, the evidence was shaky. Handwriting experts disagreed on whether the ransom notes matched Hauptmann's. The ladder used in the kidnapping didn't fit his carpentry skills. And witnesses placed him elsewhere the night of the crime. Over the years, alternate theories have emerged. Some believe the kidnapping was an inside job, orchestrated by someone close to the Lindbergh family. Others point to organized crime figures who may have used Hauptmann as a fall guy. Even the famed aviator himself faced whispers of involvement, though no proof ever surfaced. The Lindbergh case remains a dark chapter in history, not just for its tragedy, but for the unsettling possibility that the wrong man paid the ultimate price. With key evidence lost or mishandled, and Hauptmann's defiant last words, "I am innocent," echoing through time, this mystery may never be fully put to rest. Now, shifting from the unresolved shadows of the Lindbergh case, we step into the glitz and tragedy of Hollywood's golden age with the mysterious death of Marilyn Monroe. On August 5, 1962, the world was stunned when the iconic actress was found dead in her Los Angeles home, an empty bottle of sleeping pills beside her. Officially ruled a suicide, her death has fueled decades of speculation. Was it truly an accident or something far more sinister? Monroe's final hours were a blur. She'd spent the day speaking to friends, even laughing on the phone with one just hours before her body was discovered. Yet by midnight, she was gone. The autopsy revealed a lethal dose of barbiturates, but oddly, no traces of pills were found in her stomach. How could she have swallowed so many pills without leaving evidence? This inconsistency alone has kept conspiracy theories alive. Then there's the Kennedy connection. Monroe was rumored to have had affairs with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, and some believe she knew too much about their secrets. Phone records show she called the White House repeatedly in her final weeks, and rumors swirled that Robert Kennedy was in Los Angeles the night she died. Even more chilling, her personal diary vanished after her death, with some claiming it contained explosive revelations about the Kennedys. Others point to the Hollywood machine itself. Monroe had been struggling with studio pressures, failed marriages, and mental health battles. Could her death have been a cry for help gone tragically wrong? Or was it a carefully staged cover-up, with key documents still classified and witnesses long silenced? The truth about Marilyn's final night remains as elusive as her enigmatic smile. One thing's certain: her legacy endures, not just as a screen legend, but as a mystery wrapped in glamour and whispered intrigue. From the enigmatic tragedy of Marilyn Monroe, we now turn to another icon whose sudden death shocked the world: Bruce Lee. The martial arts legend was at the peak of his career when, on July 20, 1973, he collapsed in Hong Kong and was pronounced dead from what doctors called cerebral edema, a sudden swelling of the brain. But how could a man known for his superhuman fitness meet such an abrupt and mysterious end? The official explanation pointed to a reaction to prescription painkillers, possibly combined with heat exhaustion. Lee had complained of headaches earlier that day and taken a painkiller before lying down for a nap he never woke from. Yet skeptics quickly questioned this theory. Why would a single pill cause such a catastrophic reaction? Some speculated that Lee's intense training routines, including his famous no-water method to sweat out weight, might have led to heat stroke. Others pointed to rumors of a drug interaction or even an undiagnosed allergy. Then came the darker theories. Lee had been working on a film called Game of Death, a title some found eerily prophetic after his passing. Whispers of a curse spread, fueled by the tragic death of his son Brandon Lee decades later under equally strange circumstances. More chillingly, some suggested foul play. Could rivals in the martial arts world or even organized crime have had a hand in his demise? The mystery deepens when you consider Lee's autopsy. While cerebral edema was confirmed, no clear trigger was identified. No blockages, no aneurysms, just a brain that had swollen without obvious cause. Even today, experts debate whether it was a perfect storm of physical stress, medication, and bad luck or something far more calculated. Bruce Lee's death remains a puzzle, as fluid and elusive as the man himself. Now, shifting our focus from the personal tragedies of icons like Bruce Lee, we delve into a chilling mystery that unfolded in the frozen wilderness of Russia. In January 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out on a trek through the Ural Mountains, but only their frozen, mutilated bodies were ever found. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most baffling and horrifying cases in history, with details so strange they defy easy explanation. The hikers' tent was discovered ripped open from the inside as if they had fled in terror. Their bodies were scattered across the snow, some with crushed ribs, others with skull fractures. One hiker was missing her tongue. Stranger still, some of their clothing showed traces of radiation. What could have caused such brutal, inexplicable injuries? Initial theories pointed to an avalanche, but the terrain didn't fit. No signs of sliding snow were found. Others suggested infrasound, a low-frequency noise that can induce panic, possibly caused by wind patterns, but that doesn't explain the physical trauma or radiation. Then came the wilder speculations. Were the hikers attacked by indigenous tribes or escaped prisoners? Did they stumble upon a secret Soviet military test, exposing them to experimental weapons or even a crashed UFO? The most haunting detail is the look of sheer terror captured in some of the victims' faces. Whatever they encountered that night left them no time to grab proper clothing, forcing them to flee into sub-zero temperatures in their sleepwear. Decades later, Russian authorities reopened the case, only to conclude it was an avalanche, a verdict that satisfied few. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a frozen enigma, a puzzle wrapped in snow and shadows, with answers as elusive as the truth itself. Moving from the frozen horrors of Dyatlov Pass, we now step into one of history's most scrutinized moments: the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. On November 22, 1963, as his motorcade rolled through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, shots rang out, changing America forever. The official narrative pins the blame on Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone gunman firing from the Texas School Book Depository. But the so-called magic bullet theory has fueled skepticism for decades. This single bullet, according to the Warren Commission, struck Kennedy in the back, exited his throat, then hit Governor Connally, severing ribs, shattering his wrist, and lodging in his thigh. Critics argue the bullet's path defies physics, dubbing it magical for its seemingly impossible trajectory. Even Connally himself insisted he was hit by a separate shot. If Oswald acted alone, how could one bullet cause so many wounds while remaining nearly pristine? Oswald's motives remain just as murky. A former Marine with Soviet ties, he was arrested hours after the shooting but never stood trial, gunned down live on TV by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, who claimed he acted out of grief. Was Ruby silencing Oswald? Conspiracy theories exploded. Some pointed to the mafia, angry over Kennedy's crackdowns. Others suspected CIA operatives, fearing Kennedy's plans to withdraw from Vietnam. Even the Soviets or Cuban exiles were floated as shadowy players. Decades later, declassified files reveal gaps in the investigation, missed witnesses, destroyed evidence, and odd coincidences. Acoustic experts claim to hear 4 gunshots on a police recording, hinting at a second shooter on the grassy knoll. Yet despite countless books, films, and congressional re-examinations, the truth remains as elusive as ever. The JFK assassination isn't just a mystery, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest doubts about power, secrecy, and who really pulls the strings. Now, shifting from political conspiracies to a crime that shocked the nation, we delve into the chilling mystery of Elizabeth Short, infamously known as the Black Dahlia. On January 15, 1947, her mutilated body was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot, severed at the waist and drained of blood. The brutality of the crime was matched only by its eerie staging, her body posed with arms raised, lips sliced into a grotesque smile. The press dubbed her the Black Dahlia for her rumored love of black clothing, and the 1946 film The Blue Dahlia, but the nickname only deepened the myth. Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress, had drifted through California, her life marked by broken dreams and fleeting connections. The investigation revealed a trail of failed auditions and unstable relationships, but no clear path to her killer. Then came the taunting letters. A week after her death, an envelope arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner containing Short's personal documents, birth certificate, photos, and a note signed the Black Dahlia Avenger. The killer's handwriting, analyzed by experts, suggested a calculated mind, yet the clues led nowhere. Over 50 suspects were questioned, from jealous suitors to deranged doctors, but no arrests followed. Theories spiraled. Some linked the murder to a serial killer who preyed on women in post-war LA. Others whispered of occult rituals, pointing to the body's surgical precision. Decades later, retired detectives and amateur sleuths still chase leads, from a secretive surgeon to a troubled photographer. But with evidence lost and witnesses long gone, the Black Dahlia's killer remains a ghost in the shadows. This isn't just a cold case, it's a haunting reminder of how darkness can hide in plain sight. Turning from the unsolved horrors of the Black Dahlia, we step into another enigma that has baffled investigators for decades: the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. The powerful labor union leader vanished without a trace on July 30, 1975, after leaving a Detroit restaurant where he was supposed to meet 2 mob-connected associates. His sudden absence sparked one of the most intensive manhunts in American history, yet Hoffa's fate remains one of the nation's most enduring mysteries. Hoffa's ties to organized crime were no secret. As president of the Teamsters Union, he built alliances with underworld figures, a relationship that eventually turned deadly. Rumors swirled that the mob, fearing Hoffa's return to power after his prison release, had him silenced. The most infamous theory, that he was buried in concrete beneath the end zone of Giant Stadium, a tale so vivid it became folklore, though excavations turned up nothing. Decades later, the search for Hoffa's body continues. Advances in technology have led to multiple digs, from a Michigan horse farm to a New Jersey landfill, each fueled by fresh tips or declassified FBI files. In 2022, ground-penetrating radar even scanned a former mob-linked property, but Hoffa's remains were never found. Some believe he was dismembered, others insist he was secretly relocated. With witnesses dead or unwilling to talk, the truth may never surface. Hoffa's disappearance isn't just a mob story, it's a chilling reminder of how power, betrayal, and vengeance can make a man vanish into thin air. Now, shifting to a tragedy that still sends chills down the spine, we arrive at the Jonestown Massacre. On November 18, 1978, over 900 members of the People's Temple died in a remote settlement in Guyana, a horror initially labeled as mass suicide. But the deeper you look, the more unsettling questions arise. Were all those deaths truly voluntary, or was something far darker at play? The official story claims followers willingly drank cyanide-laced Flavor Aid at the command of their leader, Jim Jones. Yet survivors and investigators have long doubted this narrative. Eyewitness accounts describe armed guards preventing escape, and autopsies revealed some victims had been injected with poison, unable to resist. The presence of children, some as young as infants, raises an even grimmer question: how many were murdered under the guise of compliance? Then there's the lingering shadow of the CIA. Declassified documents show the agency monitored Jones for years, aware of his paranoia and the temple's abuses. Conspiracy theories suggest they allowed, or even encouraged, the massacre to eliminate a growing embarrassment. Others point to the suspicious deaths of key witnesses like Congressman Leo Ryan, who was shot dead just before the massacre after visiting Jonestown to investigate. Decades later, the truth remains buried under layers of propaganda and fear. Were those 900 lives lost to blind devotion or something more sinister? The Jonestown massacre isn't just a story of cult madness. It's a haunting puzzle of power, control, and the lines between suicide and slaughter. Turning now to a crime that shocked the nation and redefined gangland violence, we arrive at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. On February 14, 1929, 7 members of Bugs Moran's North Side Gang were lined up against a wall in a Chicago garage and executed in broad daylight. The brutality was so calculated, so cold, it sent a clear message this was Al Capone's work. But the real mystery lies in the shadows behind those gunmen. Were they really just hired thugs or something far more unsettling? The official story pins the massacre on Capone's men, dressed as police officers who lured Moran's crew into a trap. Witnesses reported seeing men in uniforms leading the victims inside before the gunfire erupted. But here's where it gets murky. Some accounts suggest actual cops were involved, either bribed or coerced into participating. Others claim Capone himself was in Florida at the time, crafting an airtight alibi while his rivals were wiped out. Then there's the ballistics evidence. The killers used Thompson submachine guns, a favorite of both gangsters and law enforcement at the time. Shell casings matched weapons later tied to Capone's outfit, but rumors persisted that police-issued guns were used to muddy the trail. Even more chilling, the sole survivor, Frank Gusenberg, bled out before he could name his attackers, leaving the truth to die with him. Decades later, questions still linger. Was this just another gangland hit, or did corruption run so deep that the line between cop and criminal vanished that day? The St. Valentine's Day Massacre remains a stark reminder of an era when justice wore many masks, and some of them were hiding in plain sight. Now, let's shift our focus to a tragedy that captivated the world and still sparks heated debate. The death of Princess Diana. On August 31, 1997, the beloved People's Princess was killed in a high-speed car crash in Paris, leaving millions in shock. But beneath the grief and headlines, unsettling questions linger. Was this a tragic accident or something far more sinister? The official account points to a drunk driver and the relentless pursuit of paparazzi. Diana's car, speeding through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, lost control and slammed into a pillar. Her driver, Henry Paul, was later found to have been intoxicated, while the swarm of photographers chasing her only added to the chaos. Yet, inconsistencies quickly emerged. Witnesses reported a mysterious white Fiat that seemed to collide with Diana's Mercedes moments before the crash, a car that vanished without a trace. Then there's the eerie timing. Diana had reportedly feared for her life in the months leading up to the accident, even writing a letter claiming she believed someone was planning to kill her in a staged car crash. Add to that the odd behavior of emergency responders, with some alleging critical delays in medical treatment. Even more chilling, the black box from the car, which could have provided crucial details, was never recovered. Decades later, theories range from royal family involvement to intelligence agency cover-ups. Was Diana silenced because of her activism or her relationship with Dodi Fayed? Or was this simply a case of reckless driving and media frenzy gone horribly wrong? The death of Princess Diana remains one of history's most haunting mysteries, a moment where fame, power, and tragedy collided, leaving us to wonder if we'll ever know the full truth. Turning now to another enigmatic death that shook the music world, we delve into the tragic and controversial end of Kurt Cobain. On April 5, 1994, the Nirvana frontman was found dead in his Seattle home, an apparent suicide by gunshot. But from the very beginning, something about the official story didn't add up. First, there's the question of the overdose. Cobain had a massive amount of heroin in his system, 3 times the lethal dose according to the coroner. How could someone so incapacitated even hold a shotgun, let alone pull the trigger? Then there's the suicide note, which many argue reads more like a farewell to fame than a goodbye to life. Even stranger, the final lines appear to be written in a different handwriting, leading some to believe the note was altered or even forged. Enter private investigator Tom Grant, hired by Cobain's wife, Courtney Love, just days before his death. Grant quickly became convinced that Cobain's death wasn't a suicide. He pointed to the lack of fingerprints on the gun, the missing credit card used to purchase the shotgun, and the fact that Cobain's body wasn't discovered for 3 days despite a greenhouse worker reportedly seeing him alive after the supposed time of death. Theories swirl around potential foul play, from financial motives to personal vendettas. Was Cobain murdered, and if so, by whom? Or was this the tragic culmination of a troubled genius battling addiction and depression? Decades later, the mystery endures, leaving fans to wonder if the full truth about Kurt Cobain's death will ever come to light. Now, shifting our focus to another pivotal moment in history, let's examine the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., a tragedy that not only silenced a towering voice of the civil rights movement, but also left behind a web of unanswered questions. On April 4, 1968, King was fatally shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. While James Earl Ray was quickly arrested and confessed to the crime, the circumstances surrounding the murder have fueled decades of doubt and speculation. First, consider Ray's confession itself. He initially pleaded guilty but recanted just 3 days later, claiming he was coerced into admitting guilt. Ray, a small-time criminal with no known marksmanship skills, somehow pulled off a perfect single-shot kill from a distance, a feat even seasoned snipers might find challenging. Then there's the mysterious figure witnesses reported seeing fleeing the scene, a man who didn't match Ray's description. The deeper you dig, the more unsettling it becomes. King's family openly rejected the official narrative, convinced he was the target of a conspiracy. Their suspicions weren't unfounded. Declassified documents later revealed the FBI's COINTELPRO program, which actively surveilled and sought to discredit civil rights leaders, including King. Was his assassination the culmination of these efforts? Adding to the intrigue, a civil court jury in 1999 found that King's death was the result of a conspiracy involving government agencies, not just a lone gunman. Yet, despite this bombshell ruling, no further investigations were pursued. Whether it was Ray acting alone or a shadowy plot to eliminate a revolutionary leader, the truth remains frustratingly out of reach. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. stands as a haunting reminder of how power, secrecy, and injustice can intertwine, leaving history to grapple with the unanswered. Turning now to a crime so chilling it still haunts the small town of Villisca, Iowa, more than a century later. On June 10, 1912, the quiet Moore family home became the scene of one of the most brutal unsolved massacres in American history. 8 victims, including 6 children, were bludgeoned to death with an axe as they slept. The killer left almost no trace, even covering the victims' faces with clothing, as if haunted by their own actions. The investigation that followed was riddled with bizarre twists. A traveling preacher, Reverend George Kelly, became the prime suspect after erratic behavior and a questionable alibi. But despite 2 trials, he was acquitted both times, largely due to the prosecution's reliance on a controversial psychic's testimony. The psychic claimed to have visions of the murders, even describing the killer's appearance, but her account was riddled with inconsistencies. Then there was the strange case of Frank Jones, a local politician and bitter rival of the Moore family patriarch. Rumors swirled that Jones hired a hitman, but evidence was circumstantial at best. Another suspect, a transient named William Mansfield, was linked to similar axe murders across the Midwest, but again, nothing stuck. With each acquittal, the trail grew colder. What makes the Villisca axe murders so unnerving isn't just the brutality, it's the eerie normalcy of the town itself. No forced entry, no stolen valuables, just a killer who vanished into the night, leaving behind a puzzle that defies logic. Was it a calculated act of revenge, a serial killer's spree, or something even darker? Over 100 years later, the axe still hangs in the local museum, a silent reminder of the lives taken and the truth that may never be known. As we move forward, prepare to unravel another enigma, one that involves international espionage and a weapon straight out of a spy thriller. But that's a story for the next mystery. Now let's step into the shadowy world of Cold War espionage, where a single umbrella became the deadliest weapon. On September 7, 1978, Bulgarian dissident writer Georgi Markov was waiting for a bus near Waterloo Bridge in London when he felt a sharp sting in his thigh. A stranger had bumped into him, apologizing before disappearing into the crowd. Markov thought little of it until fever, vomiting, and agonizing pain set in days later. Doctors were baffled until an autopsy revealed a tiny pellet embedded in his leg, its hollow core filled with ricin, a poison so lethal that a single grain can kill an adult. The murder weapon, an umbrella modified to fire the pellet like a dart. This wasn't just any assassination, it was a theatrical, almost cinematic hit, designed to send a chilling message to critics of Bulgaria's communist regime. Suspicion immediately fell on the KGB, or Bulgaria's secret police, who had a history of silencing defectors. Markov, after all, had been a vocal critic on the BBC's World Service, mocking the regime's corruption. But proving who gave the order has been nearly impossible. Declassified files later revealed that the KGB had indeed trained Bulgarian agents in umbrella assassinations, and a similar attack on another dissident in Paris suggested a pattern. Yet no one was ever charged. The killer vanished just like the truth. Was it a direct order from Moscow or a rogue operation by Sofia's secret police? Even Markov's widow believed the case would never be solved, calling it a crime without a criminal. What lingers isn't just the brutality of the method, it's the brazenness. A murder in broad daylight on the streets of London using a weapon that seemed ripped from a spy novel. The umbrella tip may have delivered the poison, but the real weapon was fear. And with that, we turn to another mystery where reality blurs into legend, a disappearance that still sparks debates about curses and cover-ups. Now, let's shift from Cold War intrigue to a modern mystery that feels ripped straight from a horror movie. In January 2013, 21-year-old Canadian student Elissa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, a place with a dark history tied to serial killers and suicides. Days later, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a chilling piece of evidence: elevator surveillance footage. The video shows Elissa behaving erratically, pressing multiple buttons, peering out into the hallway, and even hiding in the corner as if fleeing someone or something. But here's the twist: no one else appears in the frame. Her movements are frantic, almost unnatural, sparking theories ranging from mental health episodes to supernatural forces. Then, weeks later, the nightmare deepened. Guests complained of low water pressure, and when maintenance checked the rooftop water tank, they found Elissa's body floating inside. How did she get there? The tank's heavy lid was closed, and the ladder to access it was nearly impossible to climb. The coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning, but questions piled up. Why was her clothing missing? How did the elevator malfunction during her final moments? And most haunting of all, why did her case eerily mirror the plot of the 2002 Japanese horror film Dark Water, where a woman's ghost haunts a building's water supply? Some dismissed the parallels as coincidence, but others wondered if the killer staged the scene. The Cecil's grim reputation only fueled speculation, with links to the Night Stalker and other infamous criminals. Yet despite internet sleuths dissecting every second of the footage, no definitive answers emerged. Was Elisa Lam's death a tragic accident or something far more sinister? The truth remains submerged, much like the shadows lurking in that elevator. And with that, we move to another enigma, one where magic and mortality collide in ways even Houdini couldn't escape. Now, let's step into the world of illusion and intrigue, where even the greatest escape artist couldn't evade death's grip. Harry Houdini, the legendary magician who defied locks, chains, and watery graves, met an end as baffling as his stunts. In October 1926, after a performance in Montreal, a university student punched Houdini in the stomach, testing his famed ability to withstand blows. Days later, the magician was dead, the official cause a ruptured appendix, but whispers of foul play swirled from the start. Houdini had spent years debunking fraudulent mediums, exposing their tricks with the same flair he used on stage. His crusade made him powerful enemies, particularly among spiritualists who relied on deception. Some believe one of them slipped him poison, disguised as a harmless substance to silence him permanently. Others point to the punch itself. Could a single blow really trigger fatal appendicitis, or was it merely a convenient cover for something darker? Adding to the mystery, Houdini's wife, Bess, held yearly seances to contact his spirit following a pact they'd made. Though the attempts ended after a decade, they fueled speculation. Had Houdini's obsession with the afterlife and his defiance of those who exploited it sealed his fate? Even in death, the master of escape left us questioning. Was it a tragic twist of biology, or did Houdini's greatest vanishing act involve forces beyond the stage? The truth remains locked away, much like one of his infamous handcuffs. And with that, we turn to a shot that changed the world, the assassination that ignited a global war. Now, let's journey to a single moment that reshaped the map of the world. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914 didn't just claim a life, it lit the fuse for World War I. But was the gunman, Gavrilo Princip, acting alone, or was he a pawn in a far deadlier game? That fateful day in Sarajevo began with chaos. A bomb thrown by one conspirator missed the Archduke's car, and it seemed the plot had failed. But then, by sheer chance, Princip found himself standing just feet away as the royal motorcade took a wrong turn. His 2 shots killed Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, but the real mystery lies in who orchestrated the attack. Princip belonged to the Black Hand, a secret Serbian nationalist group with ties to shadowy figures in the military. Some historians argue the Serbian government itself may have known about the plot, turning a blind eye to destabilize Austria-Hungary. Others point to rogue factions within the Black Hand, acting without official approval. Even the Archduke's own security was shockingly lax. Was that incompetence or something more sinister? The aftermath was a tinderbox of alliances and accusations. Austria-Hungary's ultimatum to Serbia dragged in Russia, Germany, France, and Britain, spiraling into global war. But here's the haunting question. Did Princip and his comrades realize their bullets would trigger such carnage, or were they unwitting tools of larger forces? The truth, like the war that followed, is layered in shadows. And with that, we turn to another death wrapped in Cold War intrigue, one that claimed the first man to ever touch the stars. Now, we shift our gaze from the battlefields of World War I to the heights of the Cold War, where another enigmatic death leaves us questioning the official story. The tragic demise of Yuri Gagarin, the first human to journey into space, remains shrouded in suspicion decades after his jet crashed in March 1968. Gagarin's death was a devastating blow to the Soviet Union. a national hero gone in an instant. Officially, the cause was a routine training flight gone horribly wrong, with his MiG-15 fighter jet spiraling out of control due to poor weather or a sudden maneuver to avoid a weather balloon. But whispers of foul play began almost immediately. Some theorists point to the strange circumstances surrounding the crash. Why was Gagarin, a cosmonaut with limited recent flight experience, allowed to pilot such a high-speed aircraft without a more experienced co-pilot? Why were critical details about the crash site and wreckage kept classified for decades? And why did fellow cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov, who died in a space mission just a year earlier, reportedly warn Gagarin that the Soviet leadership was pushing them too hard? The most chilling theory suggests the KGB orchestrated Gagarin's death to silence him. Rumors persist that he had grown disillusioned with the Soviet regime, even planning to defect. Others speculate he knew too much about hidden failures in the space program. Even the official investigation files, finally declassified in 2011, contain puzzling gaps fueling suspicions of a cover-up. Was it simply a tragic accident, or did the first man in space become a casualty of Cold War paranoia? The truth, much like the vastness of space Gagarin once conquered, remains just out of reach. And with that, we descend into our final mystery, one that takes us deep into the jungles of New Guinea, where another famous figure vanished without a trace. Now, we journey from the Cold War shadows to the dense, untamed jungles of New Guinea, where the disappearance of Michael Rockefeller in 1961 remains one of history's most haunting vanishing acts. The young heir to the Rockefeller fortune was on an expedition to collect indigenous art when his boat capsized near the Asmat region. Stranded in shark-infested waters, Rockefeller made a fateful decision to swim for help, leaving his Dutch companion behind. He was never seen again. The official explanation claims he drowned during that desperate swim, his body lost to the currents, but whispers of a far darker fate emerged almost immediately. The Asmat people, known for their ritualistic practices, were rumored to have killed and consumed Rockefeller as part of a tribal revenge ritual. Years later, journalists and anthropologists uncovered chilling accounts from local tribesmen, some admitting they had speared the outsider in retaliation for earlier killings of their own people by Dutch colonial forces. Yet contradictions muddy the waters. No physical evidence, no bones, no personal effects has ever been found to confirm cannibalism. Supporters of the drowning theory argue the currents were deadly and Rockefeller, exhausted, stood little chance. Others point to his lack of survival skills in such a hostile environment. But the most unsettling question lingers. Why did the Dutch government and Rockefeller's own family quietly abandon searches after initial efforts? Was it to avoid stirring tensions with the Asmat or something more calculated? The truth may lie buried in the swamps of New Guinea, where the jungle keeps its secrets well. And with that, we've reached the end of our journey through 30 of history's most baffling deaths, each a puzzle that continues to captivate and unsettle us. Which mystery left you questioning everything? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the shadows of history. Until next time, keep questioning the stories we think we know. As we wrap up this deep dive into history's most enigmatic deaths, certain eerie patterns emerge: political cover-ups shrouded in secrecy, unexplained toxins that defy logic, and vanished bodies that leave behind only whispers and speculation. From Alexander the Great's sudden demise to the chilling disappearance of Michael Rockefeller, each mystery challenges what we think we know about the past. So, which of these 30 unsolved deaths unsettled you the most? Was it the poisoned wallpaper that may have claimed Napoleon, or the cryptic final days of Edgar Allan Poe? Perhaps the Dyatlov Pass incident, with its radiation and missing tongues, left you questioning everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which mystery keeps you up at night. And if you're hungry for more, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Part 2 is already in the works, packed with even more baffling cases that history has yet to explain. Until then, keep digging into the shadows because the truth is often stranger than fiction.